Welcome viewers, welcome listeners to another episode in the teleseminar series, Trust After Trauma, Recapturing Faith, Living a Life of Power, Passion, and Purpose After Tragedy. I'm so happy to welcome Devorah today as our interviewee, as our expert. She has been a mentor for me in the business coaching that I'm doing and is an amazing, open-hearted, supportive person. And I am so thrilled that she had the time to be with us today. Before I introduce her formally, I would like to, I'm sorry if I'm looking away from the screen, my email is fooling around with me. So what I like, we have been doing the last few times, I want to be sure that we set our intention for this interview. And my intention and Deborah's intention and the intention for the whole summit really is that we create a space for you where you feel and you know that it is possible to move from trauma to trust, and it is possible for you to recapture your faith and live a life of power, passion, and purpose after tragedy. And wherever you are in that journey, my hope and Deborah's hope and intention is that this interview will take you from wherever you are to wherever you need to go. So with that, let me tell you who Deborah is. She has been a master storyteller for over 30 years. And today, she helps writers and entrepreneurs to find clarity and confidence to tell their deep, authentic story. So one of the reasons I wanted her in this summit is that one of the paths from trauma to trust is by telling those deep inner stories. As long as we hold those things inside and they remain secrets, we don't have a way of finding our path to trust. So she's runs. Let me just. So she helps her clients both travel deep within and find their stories, and not only find it, but then tell the story in a deep and authentic way. And that's what I'm hoping that you'll get from this, the importance of that journey inside and the ability to tell that story. And I'm also really excited because in today's interview, she will also be taking you through a guided meditation that will show you some of the impact of the work that she does. So Deborah, thank you so much for joining us here and being part of this journey for me and for the listeners to go from trauma to trust.
It is my honor. It's my honor. It's my pleasure. It's a hard topic, but such an important one.
Thank you. That's one of the things I just felt really driven to do it, partly because so trauma has been a big part of my life, both with, starting with my mother dying in a plane crash when I was 19, to losing a child, to most recently a nephew committing suicide. And there was all of that. There was other things going on in my life. And then there was a general atmosphere in the country where everyone seems to be frightened and desperate. And I really feel that this seminar series is guided because I asked what the next thing I should talk about is, and this came through loud and clear. So thank you again for being here and helping me with this. Typically, I start my summits and my interviews with this question about, tell me about your journey. The idea is both so that the viewers can get to know you a little bit more. And in the context of this seminar series, the question is, give us a flavor of your experience with trauma and how you worked your way from trauma to trust.
Okay, so I was really thinking about that and what do I want to tell you about that? And so I will tell you one of the hardest things that I went through. It isn't, and like often traumas over time, I went through 10 years of infertility.
Wow.
I did not get married until I was 32,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a number of miscarriages, including one that was a very hard kind of a miscarriage, and it was called a molar pregnancy, and it caused scarring in my uterus, and I didn't know that. And so I went through these 10-year, really, anyone who's been through infertility, it's kind of like hell. It's really it's a very hard place to be. And then I'm part of the kind of an observant spiritual Jewish community, and so the values of having children are so strong. So people all around us were having children, and so much of the community was involved with children. And I would go through every time every cycle was a disappointment, and then I had a number of other miscarriages. And so one of the main things that always has helped me all my life is my relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I grew up Jewish, but I grew up in a very kind of secular Jewish family. It was important we were Jewish. My parents were Holocaust survivors and were culturally very important. It was important to them that they were Jews. And I went to what was called Hebrew school, which was really terrible in those days. But I always believed in God. I don't know how I knew. I just had my own relationship with God. And so when I finally went off to college, I was like, I am done with this Jewish stuff, but I wasn't done with my relationship with God. And that's a whole separate story about how I tried out all these other New Age groovy spiritual paths and eventually found my way back to my own tradition with a spiritual uplifting path for me in that. So by the time I was going through my infertility, I was already inside of a spiritual practice inside my Jewish world that was very soul nourishing to me. So prayer was really a part of my practice. And I remember one day really noticing that I was praying all the time for a healthy child. And it dawned on me one day when I was praying, talking to God, that I thought, what I'm praying for, I'm not praying to be pregnant. I'm praying for a healthy child. And I turned to my husband and I said, we should really, we had talked about adoption. Adoption is, I knew people were interested in it. And I said, we want to have a healthy child. So it took a little bit of, we did a couple of counseling sessions, and we had to kind of rearrange our view of what would be the answer to what was not working. And so we decided we would adopt. And what happened was that when we signed up with the adoption attorney, I had already this intuitive feeling like our child was born. And 5 months later, indeed, I was at the birth mother's birth of our daughter. But there is something that this left me with. It tapped into this feeling like I can conceive, but I can't give birth. I can conceive, but everything I conceive miscarries. So it put this, a lot of times the trauma sets a pattern up of what's possible and what's not possible. So it then began to, I began to feel like this was what my whole life was like, that I could have ideas, but I couldn't make them into physical reality. So I still have to deal with that a little bit, but at least now it's in the front of my consciousness. And I've actually told this story to my clients and to listeners, just like I am to you, to really then pull out and I'll use it sometimes, not so much to talk about how I went through trauma. And I have some other things to say about how to get through it. But, what I realized is that lots of us have the feeling that we can envision or conceive something, but we can't actually bring it to fruition.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things that I talk about and work with. So I will say one of my key ways of getting through trauma is spiritual connection, is my relationship with God, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
That's a big part of who I am. And what is steadfast for me, you know, I mean, sometimes I have to make sure to take my time in my life to connect.
Yeah.
But that, I would say, is something that and the other thing that really got me through that, also my mother died very tragically before I had as an adult. I mean, I was a married adult, not as a child, but she was a pilot and flew her single engine plane around the world. She was quite an extraordinary person, and she died also flying that airplane.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's very a death can be a trauma depending on the nature of it. And this was not, it was a traumatic death, but it actually wasn't in the end a trauma in my, first of all, she was older and it was tragic, but it was in the right time of her life. But I was part of a community.
Yeah.
And they just flooded into my life and supported me. So having a spiritual practice and having a supportive community, I think, are two of the most fundamental things that hold me up when I fall down.
Thank you. I just want to touch on that a little bit, because one of the things that I talk about when I talk about trauma is my experience with losing a baby who I delivered at 28 weeks, and he didn't survive beyond 4 days. And I had already lost, I lost my mother when I was 19. So there was this older lady who had lived in my dad's house and who had helped around the house and who had come to stay with us when my mom died. And after I lost the baby, her son was going somewhere to a temple to do, he had an annual pilgrimage. And there was a lot of other stuff going on in my life. And I came to her and I said, will you ask your son to make this offering in that temple? And this was just about a week after the baby had died. And she told me, no, this is not the time for you to make that offering, because you are empty inside, and it was like, for me, this is a completely illiterate, all that she has is the wisdom of her life. So, and what it allowed me to do was to say, okay, at this point in my life, I'm not sure about my faith. I am going through this period where I'm questioning everything. And what her telling me that you're empty right now, this is not the time for you to do this, make this offering, allowed me to do was to say, it's okay. There are times in your life when you are questioning. And at that time, what helps so much is to have a community that holds that faith for you, right? That holds you in that spirit, knowing that you will make your way through this. But so one of the things I talk about in my opt-in video is that the first thing I want you to know, if you are in a space where you have lost trust because of trauma, is that that's okay. We are here to hold that space for you, because we know, and actually God knows, that you will make your way through this space and come through. Did you have anything? Yeah, thank you. So let's talk a little bit more about the practices. So I think going into a little bit more about your spiritual practices and the tools that you use with your clients to help them work through traumatic events and things would be awesome.
Okay. So I have a few things to say about that. So I'm going to lead eventually up to a very deep creative practice that I lead people through. But I want to talk a little bit about what I call getting out of the goo. And it's actually you're going to actually get a whole training, a whole webinar about this separately from this interview. And this way of talking about it has come to me recently. And one of the things I realized that no matter what you've gone through, whether it's a big trauma or a little trauma or an inside your head trauma, whatever it is, what I have come to see is that the process of growth has these 3 steps. And if you know what these 3 steps are, it will always help you keep moving forward. So the 3 steps are vision, right? Even if you've gone through trauma, there comes a point where you lift your head up and you see the potential of how do I move forward? You have at least some vision, right? I had a vision. I wanted to have a child. I didn't know how, but I knew I had a vision. You have some kind of vision of becoming whole again. And maybe you begin the bettering process where you have a vision of creating something, creating a business, creating a project, a communal event, some vision of something you want to create, you want to write, you want to do. As soon as you have this vision, and it's wonderful, and you're excited about it, and you're growing, and you feel some hope, you will inevitably and always hit resistance. It is just how the world works. And if you want to read a lovely little book about this, it's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And what he calls resistance, and I love his book, I call the goo. And I'll tell you why. First of all, it's a little funny, which helps. When the classic transformational metaphor is the caterpillar to the butterfly. And that little caterpillar, when it builds its chrysalis, it doesn't just sprout little butterfly wings on its caterpillar body. It literally turns to goo. Yuck. Nobody likes to turn into goo. It doesn't feel good. You could think of it as becoming like goo or being stuck in quicksand. It doesn't feel good. But if you know it's just the goo, so the caterpillar, it's in the goo, but that's not bad. It's not bad. Inside that goo, it's becoming a butterfly. It's becoming a butterfly. And it comes out of the goo. And it's a butterfly. What the heck? It's a butterfly. But what happens if you don't know these 3 steps is you think the goo is the whole story. And it's not. The 3 steps are always for everything, growth and vision. You want to grow. You have a vision. You're trying something new, and wham, chaos. The goo, the resistance, all hell breaks loose, whatever it is. But if you know this is just the 2nd step, and the 3rd step is manifestation, the 3rd step is the becoming your vision, is the reality of your vision. If you know this, then when you land in the goo, you go, oh, it's the goo. Just need a tool, and all you need to get out of the goo is help. You just need a tool. It could be community, can be prayer, can be running, can be reading. It can be so many things. But here's the trick. This is the most important part, is that when you know it's the goo, it stops you from beating yourself up for being in it. Right? Like that is the deadly part. Because if I land in the goo, meaning I feel terrible, I'm depressed, I blew it, I made a big mistake, something happened, something is going wrong, whatever it is, and I go, oh my, I'm such an idiot, I'm so terrible, oh my gosh, I'm always failing. If I start telling myself bad things about myself and I beat myself up, I just lodge myself deeper and deeper and deeper into the goo. But if I have enough knowledge, like if you can just go, wait a minute, this is the goo. I have a vision. I actually have a vision. I'm in the goo. What do I need to do? This is the question you say. I'm in the goo. What do I need to do? And The other way to think about it is you have to just get up. Just get up. Get up, meaning just literally get up. Get up, physically get up, physically move, get out of your house, walk or run or swim or bike or dance. Move, get up and move. That is one really great way of getting out of the goo. But you can get up, meaning get spiritually up, right? You can lift up your energy by praying, meditating, yoga, which again is moving. But you have to get up. And I will take you through all of this in the free gift that you'll have as part of the summit that's called Get Out of the Goo. But this is such an important reframing of what's happening to you, because when you've gone through trauma, and even if you're in the getting up process, you'll get triggered back into the old feelings. And you know it's just the goo.
Yeah.
If you know it's, okay, this is the goo, what do I do? You just, that literally would say to yourself, oh, this is the goo. What do I do? It's really very powerful. So that's one tool, and I'm going to take people through a guided process. That's another one. And that bigger perspective is really, really powerful.
And where does the storytelling come in here? Is it?
Okay, so that's a whole separate thing, but the first thing is to get unstuck. And that's this get out of the goo. So then you're not in the goo. And here's the thing with the story. There are two ways that storytelling is important in this area. So first, if there's telling your story to a trusted coach or guide or mentor or family friend, and you do that in order to heal. It's not as a performance, it's not in your business, it's part of your healing. And you choose wisely who you're going to do that with, right? Yeah. So you pick somebody like one of us, who's a coach, who's trusted, who's an expert, who's going to receive your story with love.
Yeah.
So one of the things I do, and we'll go through this process, is I lead people through a whole variety of guided processes. It has the acronym STATE. It's called my in-story process. And I have developed this in order for people to go in and find their stories, also to go in and clear the stories that aren't working anymore. And to what I find is when people have a very, very big story to tell that has a lot of trauma in it, often they want to write it. Like if you heal enough, what happens is you arrive at the point where you have learned how to get back up out of your trauma, and you feel you want to help the next person. And that's a very beautiful and healing thing to do. The problem I find is that people who have this experience, and I'll give you a whole example of somebody I'm working with who's going through this, but what they bump into, what you might bump into, is that it's just too big, too painful, and too overwhelming, and you don't know where to start. Don't know how to bring it out. So this, I'll tell you a quick example of a brand new person who just started to work with me. And she's in her 70s, and she's had, some loss and trauma and all kinds of things in her life. And she has done a lot of healing. And she came to the place where she realized she wanted to write a book to help other people who are going through trauma and loss, especially loss. And she realized, I guess I have to tell my story. And she couldn't do it. She would go to write, and everything she wrote felt bad to her. It felt terrible. It wasn't working. So she found out about me and loved what I do. And we spoke, and I said, I can help you, because when I lead you through my guided process, and you're going to all get a chance, I promise, to experience it in just a second. what that will do is it will allow you to go around the resistance and around your try harder mind, and it will give you the ability to let your stories out in surprising ways. And so we did this. So she signed up to work with me. She's going to be working with me over a year as a private client. And so because I like to give people this chance to hold their vision, because it's very healing, and you'll see this will really, you'll love this story. So, okay, so we go to have our first session, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I kind of know what she's working on, and I lead her through my guided process. And so here's what she got. The first story that she got was a memory of her 8-year-old birthday party. And her mother had gotten this cake that had like a beautiful like princess on the top, and the frosting was all the skirts of the princess. Very beautiful cake. And they had a dachshund. So they had eaten some of the cake. They had gone down to their basement to play when they heard this crash, and they came upstairs, and the dachshund had been eating the cake. And he was so startled when they came in that he knocked the cake over onto himself, looked up, and had little rings of pink all over his face, and they proceeded to burst into hysterical laughter. She said, it was the funniest thing we had ever seen. So we laughed so hard. My mother was upset, but we thought it was the best thing ever. As 8-year-old girls, nothing was funnier to us than our pink frosting all over the dog. So that was her first story. Her second story was a story as an adult in her 40s of her kitten. She came home with a bag from the drugstore that was the plastic bag with like a little handle, and her kitten had managed to be so curious that it put its head through the handles of the bag, freaked itself out, and started charging all over her house as fast as it could with this bag stuck on its head, hysterically running and jumping. And she said it made her laugh so hard. Even when she was telling it to me, she was laughing so hard she could hardly talk. Till she finally caught the kitten and took the bag off. And then when I asked her for an image or a metaphor, she had an image of herself as a child spinning with joy in a playground. And I said to her, and she's like, what does this have to do with anything?
Yeah.
And I said, because you need a container of joy in order to begin the process of telling stories of loss. Yeah. And I told her, I gave her the assignment to create, to give herself some moments of pure joy. She said that image of the little girl spinning in the park, it was an image of pure joy. Yeah. And one of the things that when you have experienced a devastating loss is pure joy is something that you feel you will never, ever experience again. Really, when you experience a devastating loss, pure joy is not something you feel that you get to have. And so laughter is a tremendously healing process, tremendously healing. So when I said this to her, she went, wow. Yeah. Couldn't write the bleakness of it, because you can't just write bleakness. Nobody wants to read that. You need to use your story to uplift yourself and other people. And so she left from that, and we've just begun knowing that she's going forth to do some things that give her joy. Awesome. And I will write up these little stories, and once she feels joy, she can begin to write the things that were painful, because joy is a very powerful container. Yeah. And this very same thing, literally I just thought of this, it's amazing. This very same thing is exactly what just happened to one of my clients who I've been working with for 2.5 years. We've been doing this very deep work together. And so before I tell you her story, I just want to see if you want to ask a question or make a comment, and then I'll kind of go into my...
This is perfect. And this is the stage in the interview where we talk about real life examples. So this is perfect. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So this is so funny. I hadn't really thought about it, but this in the same week, the same thing happened. I love when that happens. So this was my brand new client who had the kitten and the dog and the spinning joy story. And I set her off for joy. But my client who I have been working with for 2.5 years, she came to me, but on the recommendation of a friend of hers. And she came and eventually she said, I want to write about my life story, but I can't get a word out. This is very common. I have if anybody has this, I know how to solve this problem. So she began to work with me, and what came out is that when she grew up in a very devout, beautiful Catholic family. I mean, one of those, such sweetness. She grew up and she described how she loved her communion dress, its white dress, and she loved her Catholic life. And when she got married, she was the most sweet, pure, devout wife. And they had a seminary near them, and she went to take classes there, and she loved the priest who taught the classes. But he was awful. He did one of the greatest sins that our leaders do. Our great teachers and priests and great leaders, they must never, ever engage in sexual relations with their followers. And that's what he did. He seduced this beautiful, sweet woman. Come, bring her book to my room. Oh, come in closer. And he seduced her, and it ruined her marriage, and it ruined her life. And the Catholic Church abandoned her. Everyone blamed her. No one would talk to her. It ruined her entire life. It destroyed her marriage, everything. But by the time she came to me, she was a beautiful being of light. She had done tremendous healing. She's an extraordinarily uplifted, amazing person. And she knew it was time for her to write her story. She had gained so much healing and so much wisdom. She knew it was time for her to help the next person. But she couldn't get a word out. She didn't know where to start. Nobody wants to listen to stories of abuse. They're icky and painful and horrible, and nobody wants to hear it. So how do you tell it? So she began to work with me, and she told, and out came stories, beautiful, happy stories of her family, stories of her healing. She wrote a letter to the Pope. She wrote a letter to the Cardinal, and she began to speak to leaders about what had happened to her. 2.5 years later, 2 months ago, she gave a talk, and she told her story to 100 up and coming young men who are going to be priests.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah.
She told her, so they said it was the most extraordinary moment of their training, where they understood deeply their responsibility, the holiness of their mission, the mistakes of the church. It was an incredible experience for her. But she's still trying to figure out, how does she write the story? So one of the things that she does is she is very connected to St. Francis of Assisi. And when this whole thing happened, she went to Assisi. And she's a very, very creative, very spiritual person. So she meditates, and she has her own inner conversations with St. Francis. And she writes them, and they're delightful. She came to me yesterday and she said, Devorah, I want to write my St. Francis stories. I want to write my stories about all my conversations with St. Francis. And I said the very same thing to her. I said, that brings you so much joy that the rest of the hardness of your story will be held inside of that joy. And this is such an amazing thing. And when you just go inside and let your higher wisdom, your subconscious, your higher self, your godly connection, when you let that come out, it will always lead you to the most elevated and illuminated path. One of the things I say is that my whole in-story process and my whole in-story group and everything I do is really to allow people to live an illuminated life. And it doesn't matter what you've gone through. We all have this light inside of us. and you can illuminate it. You can connect to it. You can let it out. And what does that do? It illuminates the life of the next person.
Yes.
And that is, I think, why we're here in this world, is to bring this light out.
We talked about this in a couple of other interviews, where how the trauma that you have been through or are going through is the way for you to get to the next step to reach your highest potential, so that you can then look back and lift other people who are coming after you up. So this is such a beautiful illustration of that, where she went through what she went through, but then she's used that to train upcoming priests.
Right.
It's such a beautiful illustration of that.
I'll tell you another fun, let me tell you one other quick thing about this, which is, I love to say, and it's so appropriate here, that our struggles become our wisdom, but they also become our beauty. And people can find me if they go to my Facebook page. I love to make Facebook videos, and I love to walk in the forest. And I often get my inspiration from trees. And so recently I made a video of my favorite tree in the forest, and I call her a she. Someone else I met calls her a he. But this tree has been struck by lightning, and the bottom of it is kind of curved under, and it has this blackened kind of space, and there's holes there, and the roots are on the outside, and 3 trunks come up, and there's a place to sit. It's the coolest tree ever. Why? Because she was struck by lightning. She was wounded. It's a wounded tree, and that wound makes her such a beautiful tree and so unique in the forest. And I made this video, and I said, it's our very wounds that make us beautiful. They give us our wisdom. And I just think we can take a lot of hope from that, and to have the courage to find the light, find the wisdom, find the insights from what has happened to us. And when you do, that's when you can tell your story to others. You have to be at the point where you have gained insight and wisdom. When you're still in the pain so badly, then you go to a healer. Of whatever kind you love, a guide, a healer, a mentor, a spiritual leader, and you heal. When you have healed enough, I don't mean healed perfectly, because there is no such thing. But when you have insight and wisdom and some light along the way, you can begin to share that. You do not have to be perfect or all better or never fall down or never get triggered, because that's not going to happen. But you do have to know how to get back up. You do have to have wisdom, insight, inspiration to offer the next person, because we don't want to hear your sob story. A lot of people say to me, Devorah, no one wants to hear my sob story. And I say, you're right, they don't. They want to hear your wisdom story. They want to hear your insightful, uplifting story. How did you get back up? And that's the story you tell.
Beautiful. So I think we're right at the point where you can take the viewers through the guided meditation, and then we come back and sort of wrap up and see what else we have to talk about.
Okay. All right. So for this part, just close your eyes.
Okay.
And just begin to notice your breath coming in and out. And really allow yourself to feel that shift to stillness. And then allow yourself to feel a sense of breathing bigger than your physical self. Feel that sense of your expanded being. And then feel your awareness shift to that flow from above. Allow your awareness to shift to the sense of this higher consciousness of God, the universe, source, and feel a sense that there's this very pure light flowing down from above, flowing down to the top of your head, filling your whole body, your whole being with light and love, healing, blessing, guidance, clarity down through your feet into the earth, grounding you. And breathe up that solid, rooted, grounded energy of the earth into the center of your being. And again, allow that flow from above to come down to the top of your head, filling your whole body, your whole being with light and love, healing, blessing, guidance, clarity, down through your feet into the earth, grounding you in the earth. And breathe up this rooted, solid, comforting energy of the earth into the center of your being. And be aware of being in the state of connected flow. This is the first step of this process. It has the acronym STATE. This is my own original in-story guided process. And the acronym for the steps follow the word STATE. So the first step is stop and breathe. And the second step is always think about it. So take a moment and think about who you are, what you do in the world, what you've gone through, how you've gotten up, what you've struggled with, what your insights are. Just take a moment and feel into, and just let your mind gently think on who you are, what you do in the world. Take a moment to notice the traumas that you've been through, the struggles you've gotten up from, the goodness that you do, the light that you are. Just let yourself think about yourself just for a moment. And then we're going to gather a story. The next two steps are always go together, ask and trust. And the key here is that you have to trust the first thing you get. So we're going to gather a childhood story. And the way you do that is you're just going to say, send me the perfect story for this moment. Just quietly in your mind, send me the perfect story for this moment. And then imagine that you're like breathing yourself back as far as you can go into your childhood until you bump into a story. Just breathe yourself all the way back and don't worry about what it is. It doesn't matter if it makes any sense. It might just be a moment, a memory, an image. Trust the first thing you get. Don't worry about what it is. This is really key to this. Because a lot of times you might find something, oh, this, no, I don't want this. Or you go, no, not that, not that, not that. Yes, that. The first thing that comes to your mind, trust that story. And so now you're going to just go through noticing the story. So notice, how old are you in this story? Where are you? Look around. Who's with you? What's happening? How are you feeling? What do you want? Can you tell how the other people are feeling or what they want? What else can you notice? Are there sights, sounds, smells, tastes, textures? Look all around inside this story, and when you've seen all there is to see, give this story a name. This is the such and such story. It's just a way for you to mark it and remember it. And then we're going to do one more thing. So bring your awareness back to your breath. You're just going to imagine that that story is kind of on your virtual shelf with a title. And bring yourself just back to your breath, your neutral breath, back to the first step. Stop and breathe. And just feel your breath coming in and out. And then again, feel that flow from above, filling your whole body, your whole being with light and love, healing, blessing, guidance, clarity, down through your feet into the earth, grounding you. And breathe up that solid, rooted, comforting energy of the earth into the center of your being. And be aware of being in that state of connected flow. And again, the second step, think about it. Just think about this. Just think, who are you and what do you do in the world? Just think about who you are. What are your strengths? What are your gifts? What do you love to do? What are you good at? Just let that be in the front of your consciousness. Who I am, what I love to do. And then we're going to ask for an image or a metaphor, which I work a lot with image and metaphor. And to do this, you say, what is an image or a metaphor for who I am, what I do, what I love to do in the world, for who I am, what I'm good at, for my gifts, for myself and my gifts. What's an image or a metaphor for who I am and what I do well? Like what's something good? Sense of the goodness of your being, essence of your gifts or talents. And just trust the first thing that pops into your mind. It might not make any sense. Maybe you got a yo-yo, right? Or whatever, a lemon, you know, a swimming pool. Like one woman, she's got that girl spinning around. Trust whatever pops into your mind. People get all kinds of crazy things. So trust whatever you get. And the last step is explain or interpret. And just ask yourself and trust your intuition. What is the message of this image? How am I like this image? How is this image like me? What is its feeling? How does it make me feel? What's its message, its image? And then just take a deep breath. Take that in. Bring yourself back into the moment. Stretch your hands, your fingers a little bit, and just come on back.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
You are very welcome. So if you want, do you want to share maybe just your metaphor with us, and I'll help people see how to use it? Or if not,
sure. I got a little bit confused with the metaphors, but I think I came up with it was the mouse of Ganesha. Ganesha is the elephant-headed god. And his vehicle is supposed to be a little mouse. And it was a combination of the image of Ganesha and the mouse that came up for me. And
what is that about, do you think?
So the mouse is also supposed to be an indication of breaking boundaries, because it can go into deep, small spaces and sort of clear out, nibble at things and break these things that bind us. So I think that's part of what that message is. I'll have to think. I like to sit down and write. For me, a lot of stuff comes out when I write.
And that I recommend you do that, and I recommend everybody do that. I highly recommend you write down your story, what you think it means, and write down your image and what you think it means. And in the free gift that you get from this summit, you'll get to go through this process again inside that, and it'll also have a clearing process in it.
Okay.
But it will also have a link for people, anybody who does my process. I always gift people with a free soul story session. Okay. Because I don't leave you hanging. Like you might have gotten something and you're like, what the heck? I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So you can, on my free gift, there's a link that will take you to it. You can also just go to soulstorysession.com. And on that page is a link to my calendar, because I really know that this will help you. And if you've got images and stories that you have no idea how to use or what to do with, just ask me. That's kind of my genius. You've got yours, I've got mine. I can find meaning in everything. I'm very intuitive and really good at helping you see how do you take your stories and let them out, find what they're telling you, use image, use metaphor, use feelings. All of these creative things will give you a way to find the uplifted light and message and meaning from having gone through trauma. It really does become our wisdom. It becomes our beauty. It becomes the light we can bring into the world. And I promise you, you can do that.
Beautiful. So we're sort of towards the end of the interview, and I wanted you to just talk a little bit more about your website will be part of so we're starting a Facebook group here.
Oh, good. Okay,
and
perfect.
everybody will be able to come in and access the gifts from the Facebook group and have links. Your website links will be there. But I think it's good for them to also know exactly. You have sort of private tutoring, private coaching sessions, and you also have group coaching sessions.
I do. I have, you can always, a lot of
Yes.
times the people who are really doing this deep, intensive writing work,
Yes.
they'll come in and do that writing mentorship, which is one-on-one work. But I also have an amazing group. It's called the In-Story Group, and it's the In-Story way to live an illuminated life. And it's all about creativity and inspiration and story and communal support, accountability. It really opens you up to your soul's purpose, to your vision.
Yeah.
It's getting me so, I've been having bigger and bigger visions about my In-Story Group and the In-Story way. And so I'm very excited about it. And so just trust yourselves, trust that you are here. If you are listening to this, it means that you are ready to take a step forward and to bring your story, your vision, your light, your mission, your message out to somebody in some way. And just trust that.
Beautiful, Deborah. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you really wanted to cover in this interview? Is there something you want to bring?
I'll leave you with the last words, that the whole idea of trust comes from that sense of being willing to open up to this higher guidance, to know that you're not alone, both with people around you, and you're not alone spiritually. You have tremendous resource in you. And I do a lot of work with what I call spiritual imagination. There's so much that can nourish us as we heal from these other planes, from these deeper spiritual creative sources. So I want to just inspire and encourage you to never give up. Don't quit. Remember, it's just the goo. You can get back up. And if you need our help, please do reach out.
Thank you. That's a great way to end this. Thank you so much again for taking the time to go so much into the process and being willing to guide our viewers through this process. I think this has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much, Deborah. Really, really appreciate it.
So welcome. My honor, truly.
Thank you.